Richard, thank you for being here. First question for you. When you start the year, I would imagine you have sort of a wish list or a goals list. And I'm curious, for the coming year, 2026, as you sit down in your board meetings, what are you looking to accomplish in the hypothetical for the EPL?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. The year ahead was always an interesting one, both on and off the pitch. On the pitch, obviously, what I want and what we always desire is a fantastic competition with title race, competition for European spots, a relegation battle, things that make fans tune in from all around the world. Off the pitch, we've got some big decisions to make as clubs. Which direction are we going with our financial system? It's a good time, actually, because this is the start of our new commercial term. So we're in growth. We've got 3 years ahead of us of fixed revenue, all going in the right direction. So clubs can continue to invest in players and managers from all around the world, blend it with their homegrown talent. So I think that's probably the financial system, and the fact that in the UK, there's a new regulator come in to look at certain aspects of football, and we're going to have to adjust to that. We're ready for it all, and we approach the next season with optimism.
Let's talk about the financial system since you brought it up. There are a lot of critics of the current system from a number of different ways, I think. In your mind, what would the ideal resolution be?
Well, it's now a sort of straight choice. We've had the current rules for over a decade, and we're now enforcing the situation, enforce them. They're there to put a brake on spending ultimately, and provide a competitive balance within the league. There has to be a limit on that, and clubs have all signed up to it. Obviously, we've had a few cases recently, and of course, they're a bit of a distraction from the football. So the choice now is to whether to continue with that system or possibly adjust it, or move to a system that's more aligned with UEFA. It's called squad cost ratio. On our clubs, we've been debating that with our clubs for over a year now.
Right.
So that's the decision we're going to make.
Where the EPL's rules would be aligned with UEFA's. Yeah.
And historically, that's what we've always done. UEFA have been a step ahead of us. We've had a look at what's happening. And then, for all sorts of good reasons, try and align with European regulation.
Several weeks ago, I spoke with Major League Baseball's Commissioner Rob Manfred, and he's kind of going through a similar the battle between competing interests with putting a salary cap into Major League Baseball. And I think where he's leaning is this idea that if you make the league more competitive from a spending standpoint, in the end, everybody wins. Is that your take as well?
Totally. I think perhaps the reason today why the Premier League is in growth and other European leagues are competitive set or not is because we have jeopardy. The way that we generate and share revenue gives everyone the chance of putting a really competitive squad together.
And yet there's still quite a difference between team spend, though, from 1 to 2.
There is. So, our clubs, some clubs have re-entered the league after many years out. Other clubs have been ever present. Some clubs have won it 10 times. Others haven't. There are different histories, and therefore different resources available to clubs. In the centre, the revenue we generate, we're the most egalitarian distribution of all the major European leagues. And I think that's one of the unique selling points of the Premier League, is it gives everyone a chance. Not necessarily to win the league, but to beat anyone on their day. And so when you're watching the Premier League, whether you're in New York or in London or any part of the UK or around the world, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the essence, I think, of sport, jeopardy. And we want to keep that in the game, and the financial rules are part of that.
There's one side note to that, which is if you are relegated, then there's these parachute payments, which I know the EFL is very much against because they feel like it is anti-competitive, to speak to this general notion. If you're now rewarding relegated teams with payments that don't line up with the rest of the teams, I'm curious to hear if you sort of your belief on this.
Yeah, there's a significant difference of opinion, I think, between my view on parachutes and others. Parachutes are a critically important part of Premier League competitiveness. If you're a recently promoted club or a club that might envisage relegation in a 5 to 10 year period, you've got to know that you have the support of parachute payments in order to be able to invest in players on the pitch, to be competitive. So if you want a competitive league, I think the parachutes are are an absolute necessity. The level of those parachutes and the level of distributions to the wider game is a legitimate debate to be had. And over time, we've made increasingly generous contributions to the rest of the pyramid, to the grassroots of the game. The Premier League is distributing over £1.6 billion over the last 3-year period to the rest of the game. And so we're very happy to provide that support. So it's a delicate ecosystem, and parachutes are just one of the financial instruments available to create opportunity for all.
We've seen a growing trend from an ownership standpoint in the States that has extended to the EPL of conglomerates, these ownership groups that start to buy multiple different franchises and multiple different leagues. There's a handful of examples of current owners of EPL teams that also own American teams, high-profile American teams. Are you concerned at all that the ownership of these EPL teams, if taken control by a conglomerate, they don't get the same sort of TLC or even passion that an individual owner who's also a lifelong EPL fan might have on a relative basis?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen our ownership models change over the last 30 years. We're now majority owned. 12 clubs have majority US ownership. We have ownership from the Middle East, ownership from Europe. 4 clubs still owned by British owners. Those people that perhaps might have the strongest feel for it. That's not my experience, actually. Long-term US owners, I think, have great respect for the histories and traditions of English football, and really have left it as it is and invested in the club within their communities. I think that's a really good thing. So despite multi-club ownership coming in, despite conglomerates, as you call them, that sort of connection with the club, it's impossible to break. The club and its community is there, and the traditions of English football are, I guess, more powerful than a conglomerate.
You mentioned the U.S. I have a number of questions about soccer in America. Let's start from a media rights standpoint. We've seen the NBA and the NFL in this country get enormous increases on their media rights most recently. EPL signed a deal with Peacock NBC Universal, which was a 5X deal. It's about $450 million per year. That doesn't yet compare, nor would anyone expect it to compare, with how much the NBA or the NFL is getting. But I'm curious, as you look at those numbers, do you feel that growth into the United States is the best pathway for future revenue growth for the EPL?
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that the US is our number one market outside of the UK by revenue. It's one of the reasons we're here. We brought 4 Premier League teams out to play in the summer series. It's because we're committed to US fans, we're committed to growing the sport out here and to growing the Premier League. So obviously I look forward with optimism. If you look at where our growth is in the next commercial term, with 27% up term on term internationally, a little, obviously some less than that in the UK, and the Premier League is becoming more global. So we do look to international shores for growth. It's not impossible to imagine that being a different mix going forward. And obviously we've got a process coming up in 27. One thing I can say is that the support we've had from NBC since 2013 has been amazing. In front of the camera, behind the camera, the executives we deal with, I can't praise them enough for the job they've done, I think, to grow the Premier League and soccer out here. It's been nothing short of fantastic. So now we have millions of people getting up in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays to watch their favorite Premier League team.
Are you satisfied with it, though, or is there still room to grow? I feel like there's still room to grow.
Oh, yeah. Well, no. And in terms of growing fan base, there is loads more to go for. But are we satisfied with the partnership we've had with NBC?
Sure.
Absolutely.
We're here.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth saying, to say it publicly, we say it privately all the time to them. It's been fundamental, I think, to the growth of the Premier League over here, is we've given NBC a fantastic competition, and they showcased it brilliantly to the American sporting public.
You mentioned you're here this week with these preseason friendlies. When will we see actual regular season Premier League games in the United States?
We have no plans for that at the moment. We had a look at that back in 2017. It was very controversial in the UK. And the idea behind, I guess, playing matches abroad is to grow the sport, to grow your league. And we've managed to do that in the intervening period by different methods, through great broadcasting partnerships, through digital technology, through events like Summer Series, clubs on the road, and the Premier League has become truly global. I genuinely think it's the sort of world's favourite version of the world's favourite sport, and we're really proud of that.
Why not do it? The NFL's doing it. They're everywhere.
There's a whole bunch of reasons, but mainly, we are happy with what we have in the UK, and we're not changing that.
Do you feel like there is more traditional pushback from English soccer fans than what you might see in the States?
Yes, clearly. I mean, it's possible. Our Premier League clubs host NFL games in the UK. I've been to them. Right. We have a interesting relationship with the NFL. We swap notes all the time. But on this particular topic, we're very different. We've got no plans to take matches abroad. And you're right, there would be significant pushback.
I'm curious, this is a topic that I know a lot of fans are harping on these days, but, even just this year, you've got Premier League and you've got Champions League and you've got the Club World Cup, and it's just seemingly like one tournament after another. How much power do you have as EPL CEO to push back at this and say, enough is enough? Like, we're going overboard from an athlete protection standpoint in terms of injury protection, and also just from a fan standpoint.
Well, enough is enough. We've been quite vocal on it. The truth is, the Premier League since 1994, so best part of 30 years ago, has been 380 games, 20 clubs, played between August and May. It hasn't changed. And in that period, we've seen the significant growth of European competition, and now the significant growth of global competitions. The setting up of a new version of the Club World Cup. Next year, the US will host 48 international team World Cup. It's going to be a festival of football, but it's not right to say that those ideas don't have big impacts on domestic football. They do. We've already changed the start date for our season from the first weekend in August to the second weekend. And obviously, there'll be more players coming back from next year's Club World Cup, from those expanded international teams, to then start the season with us. So it's too much. And what you asked the question, what power do I have? Obviously, I'm just one voice. I am also chair of the World Leagues Association, which is a lobbying group on behalf of chairs, on behalf of leagues. Don Garber's on the management board from the MLS. And we have lots of common views on this. And the dialogue just isn't there between us, between the leagues as stakeholders, or players with FIFA, about where this is all going. We've definitely reached saturation point. What I want, my job is to protect the Premier League. And I want players to be fit, ready and willing and able, and want to play in Premier League matches and not get distracted by other events or feel they have to make a choice. That is wrong. Domestic football is the lifeblood, really, of professional football, and it must be protected.
But it sounds like maybe you don't have that much power, sort of what you're saying. Like, you kind of have to...
and unfortunately, where does that force you if you can't have that dialogue? You're not involved in those decisions. Because FIFA obviously is a federal system. You've got the confederations, you've got the national associations, so we have our FA, they attend FIFA meetings. There needs to be a shake-up, I think, in the dialogue about these issues and to give all stakeholders a proper say.
You mentioned Don Garber, MLS commissioner. What do you think of the MLS as it exists today?
I think it's great. I mean, out here, we want the sport of football to grow. There's room for a really strong domestic MLS and also fandom around the Premier League. We're not sort of broadcast at the same times. There's some separation there, so we can coexist together.
What do you think he's trying to do? In other words, do you feel like the MLS wants to become an EPL-like league down the road, or do you feel like they're content to know that the resources aren't there, the energy isn't there, and that isn't kind of in the cards for them?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't want to speculate on Don's plan. Obviously, the MLS is growing. Some really good things going on, and we wish him and the league the best of luck.
You mentioned the World Cup coming to the United States. I think the MLS hopes that event will add to more attention and growth, given that it's within the country. I'm curious if you feel like you are banking on the World Cup to increase the marketing and attention of the EPL in this country through the World Cup.
So there's always a spike in interest. The World Cup does bring in a broader audience who follow national teams. That's whether that's players when they come back to the Premier League or individual players. It normally gives everybody a spike, including the Premier League, and we'll be hoping for that boost next summer as well. It's a great time, I think, for football, soccer in this country. You've had the Club World Cup, lots of attention. The World Cup next year, hopefully the sport can continue to grow.
One strategy we've seen from F1, which is another international league, to grow attention in this country is to lean into Netflix with a streaming series that increased popularity of F1 here. Is there anything in the works from an EPL standpoint there of trying to figure out, is there a way to connect with a streaming service to develop documentary type?
Well, you've got sort of two questions there. One, the first one's about documentaries, and we had a look at it. We were approached by various people to do it. We decided the time wasn't right for the Premier League. Our clubs have done individual documentary series with some success. One thing we are doing, we're investing in content. So we're bringing all of our broadcast production in-house in a purpose-built facility in the west of London with 300 people working there from next summer onwards. And the purpose of that, not only to put ourselves in the content supply chain, if you like, let's also find new ways to broaden audience, which is what documentary series have successfully done for F1 and others.
Do you have to tailor that somehow to an American audience, though, do you think, in order to gain American viewership?
It gives us a great opportunity to do that. But obviously we have an amazing partner, NBC, who can take a competition, have a deep understanding of the American sporting audience, and present the Premier League in a way which suits that audience. And so it take a lot for our expertise to overtake that. But again, it gives us a bigger say in our content future, and we're really excited about it.
Anecdotally, as I've spoken to soccer fans in this country, several have said to me that they have been fearful to go to games because of U.S. politics and ICE deportations. Did you see any of that in these friendlies that you just had in terms of...
I'm not aware of that at all, no. And I hope that isn't the case.
We'll see in the World Cup if U.S. politics comes up. Politics has entered EPL several times. I think your stance on it with how you have dealt with taking a knee and racism differs from, let's say, the NFL in this country. How do you negotiate how much to bring in politics to the league, how much to push back?
We're an apolitical, multi-faith organization. Football, the message is that football's for everyone. I'd say that message is sort of pushed out through a lot of the messaging you see, taking the knee. That's sort of, we'll see whether that happens again next season. There's a conversation going on with club captains at the moment. But I think a very simple messages of inclusivity shouldn't be controversial. Certainly shouldn't be political. They are somehow politicized from time to time. But as I said, we're an apolitical organization.
There was a threat a few years ago of the Super League to upend EPL. Are those discussions firmly on the back burner, or is that still in the back of your mind?
I do hope so. I mean, it was a bad week, but it was 48 hours from announcement to the end of it, really. So I hope those days don't return. We have a fantastic football competition. European football really is, to some extent, the commercial engine, really, for global football. And our club's a fantastic opportunity to play in the most watched league in the world, in the most watched regional competition in the world. It gives a fantastic opportunity, I think, to all of them.
Last question, because it ties on that. which is that I do think you can firmly argue that EPL is the, in many ways, sort of the class of all sports leagues, and that it's the highest profile soccer league in the number one global sport. And yet the money, from a media rights standpoint or overall, doesn't compare with the NFL, which again shows you theoretically there's growth in the United States. But I also wonder if it's a symptom of all of the various different European leagues and how fractured soccer is. So to tie back to my Super League question, is there some sort of way to unify soccer so that in the end you can actually grow revenue for the EPL in a way that doesn't exist today?
Well, we've always been very independently minded, and we know that we have an opportunity in front of us as the English Premier League, and I think we've taken advantage of that opportunity. But we are part of a global football family. We're part of the European football family, and it's incumbent upon all the leaders in football, I think, to have some sort of plan where people can coexist and not fight for territory like we are over the calendar at the moment. The Premier League is very happy with 20 clubs and 380 games.
No expansion plans there?
No. No decrease, no increase. 20 clubs works very well and gives fans what they want. It's a perfect season as far as I'm concerned. And we'll continue to take advantage of our opportunity. We've got an earned advantage. We'll be a £4 billion a year organisation during the course of the next commercial term. We're 99% sold out. We're the number one UEFA coefficient. Chelsea are Club World Cup champions. 2 of the 3 European trophies won by English clubs. We're really proud of all of that. And it shows that English football as a whole, not just the Premier League, is in really good shape.
Thanks for joining us, Richard.
Thank you very much.